Hey everybody, this is Danelle here at Networkchain. Hope this finds you doing well. Let's go ahead and jump into it. There's a lot going into next week, and it matters that we know more about the macroeconomic picture. We've talked about it previously in the past, and it's definitely coming into fruition going into next week as we wait to see what the Federal Reserve is going to do, whether they decide to cut rates or not. And we'll talk about why there's a strong possibility that could happen. First off, let's go ahead and start with Bitcoin, currently trading at around $116,000, just a shade under. It's up over 5% over the past week. So it was in that $110,000 range, and it's taken a nice little bump up over the past week. We'll continue to see if it will rise. It's definitely going to need to head towards all-time highs before we can show and signify that there's a possibility that Bitcoin will continue to move up and move past those previous all-time highs. And next week's decision could potentially be a part of the upcoming move. Ethereum currently trading at $4,600, and you can see that it's up over 9%, nearly 10% over the past 7 days, at least heading up towards that. XRP is actually up above 10%, nearly 11%, currently trading now over that $3 range. Solana up 21%, closing in on 250. We have BNB up 8%. Dogecoin up the most out of all in the top 10, up almost 34% at around 29 cents. Then you have Cardano and Tron rounding out the top 10. So some of the factors that the Federal Reserve Board looks at relates to employment as well as inflation. So the numbers that came out last week is that the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, recently revised their numbers. So they basically keep track of all of the labor statistics, particularly when it comes to employment, unemployment, and jobs. And so they had to revise the jobs number over the past year. So it looked like they overstated by over 911,000 jobs over the past 12 months ending in March. So basically from April of 2024 to March of 2025, the jobs were overstated. So we actually didn't have over 900,000 jobs that were actually stated in the employment reports. So this does happen. There tends to be revisions for various reasons, but this does obviously seem to be very egregious. Really doesn't make a lot of sense as to why there would be such a wide gap in the revision that needed to be made. And you can see that this is the largest preliminary revision on record going back to 2000. So it's been over around 25 years basically since a revision like this has had to be made. The BLS head was fired last month, so we'll see if there's going to be any changes moving forward with regards to the Bureau. But obviously, this is not a good sign because it's very important, not only for the Federal Reserve, but also for people like me and you and institutions to have a better understanding of what the economic picture looks like. And that economic picture definitely incorporates the employment numbers. That's actually a huge part of what's going on in the economy. If people are working, then that basically shows a sign that the economy is thriving. When people are not working, then we could be in a recession, meaning that we're not seeing people going out and spending. There's not a lot of businesses that are thriving because people are not spending and people are not working. So we need people to be working, we need money to be spent, we need businesses to produce to be able to have a strong economy. And so the Federal Reserve plays a role in this when it comes to cutting or hiking interest rates, because the lower the rates, the more likely that institutions and consumers are willing to go out and take the money that they're able to borrow at cheaper rates and invest, as well as spend and grow their businesses, for example. So it's very important to have an understanding of what's going on in the macroeconomic environment, because it definitely affects investing in crypto as well as equities. As we can see here, the producer price index also came out this past week, and it is another indicator that the Federal Reserve looks at. And basically, it is the prices that producers receive for their products when it's going to, say, a retail store, for example. So if you are a bulk producer and you're sending items like furniture, for example, to a retail store, this is referring to whether or not there's inflation with relating to the prices that they're receiving for those goods. And so we saw actually over the last month reporting, which is August. We haven't gotten the September numbers out yet, obviously, because we're still in the month of September. But you can see here that it's actually going down. So that could be a number of reasons why it went down. But partly there could potentially be, and what some people are saying is that it looks like the retailers have actually been eating some of the tariff costs instead of passing it along to the consumer. So that's a possibility. Obviously, there's still other ways to look at some of these numbers, but you can see that you can look at airline fares, cost of hotel rooms, all different types of industries, food prices, things of that nature, energy. So these are all the different types of components that are involved in coming up with this index that people use to have as a barometer with regards to what's going on from the producer side, basically the selling side of things. Then we had the CPI, which is the consumer price index. So that relates to the consumer like me and you, and how much are the differences in price in what we're paying for goods and services. So when we look at, obviously you can see all these different categories that are a part of the core, the overall core CPI. And you can see here for the consumer price index, we actually rose a little bit from the month prior. So in July, it was 2.7% inflation, and now in August, it was 2.9%. And so this is not necessarily what the Federal Reserve wanted to see. Their goal was to have 2%. It is 2% point something, but I think they wanted to actually have it inflation be a lot lower before they decided to cut interest rates. But because of the unemployment numbers, and we're not getting as many jobs as we thought, then they also want to try to make sure that there's reason for businesses to go out and employ people. But there could be obviously a bigger picture that we're not considering, or that some are not considering, when it comes to obviously just the overall environment with regards to how artificial intelligence, how robots, how best practices in terms of processes are improving using technology. And so unfortunately, there could be more issues when it comes to jobs because of the advancement of technology. Obviously, we still have a little ways to go to see exactly what the impact is going to be, but this could be the beginning of the indication of how this new technology, this new wave of AI that's coming in and robotics, that could be affecting these job numbers. So we'll definitely keep you posted on that as we move forward over the next several quarters and a couple of years. So we see here that the federal funds rate, this is what the Federal Reserve has control over, and this is the federal funds rate. Basically, it's also related to the interest rate. So if the federal funds rate is higher than credit card companies, banks, other loan facilities, they are able to charge a higher interest rate if you're trying to borrow funds. And if they lower it, then those rates also go lower as well. So if you're trying to buy a house, if you're trying to buy a car, you will see that those interest rates come down due to the lowering of the federal funds rate. So that is what decision the Federal Reserve is going to be making next week as to whether or not they're going to keep it paused, which they've had paused since January of earlier this year, or if they decide to hike, which is not going to happen, or if they're going to cut. So we're seeing that the interest still continues to flow into Bitcoin, as you can see here over the past week. These are the spot ETF inflows. We saw 5 consecutive days of cumulative inflows coming into the Bitcoin ETFs. And if we look here and we see how many, IBIT now has over 750,000 Bitcoin, and Strategy, the largest corporate holder, which is also amazing to have accumulated over 638,000 Bitcoin over the past 5 years. And if we add up all of the corporate holders as well as the funds, these ETF funds, they now have over 12% of the Bitcoin supply. So we're seeing that obviously institutional money is coming into Bitcoin through the ETFs, as well as some of them holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet themselves. So we're seeing that so-called smart money is moving into this digital asset. So we definitely want to make sure that we keep an eye on what's happening here and how much they are continuing to accumulate. And obviously Bitcoin is for everyone. So me and you also have an opportunity to buy Bitcoin. You can actually buy Bitcoin with as little as $1. So if it is something that you're interested in investing in, definitely want to make sure that you do your research and your due diligence. And we thank you for watching us. Of course, you can keep posted with us nearly every day on X as well as on IG. We post there nearly every day. And we thank you so much for watching. Make sure to remember that macro matters. Be mindful. And we look forward to linking up with you soon on the network chain. Take care.